Welcome, everybody, to Scale Without Strain, the Leadership Filter and Operational Readiness Workshop for Disability Practices. This workshop is part of Chronicle's Advancing Technology and Disability Law series, where we like to bring in some of the space's leading practitioners to educate on different thematic topics that are of interest to disability firms specifically. So we're excited for this workshop today. First, though, to take care of some housekeeping, this workshop is going to run to the top of the hour. We have about 45 minutes of content ready for you, and then we will have a Q&A section. If you have any questions along the way, you are encouraged to leave them in the Zoom chat. Just throw in 2 hashtags in front of it so it's easy to kind of track in the mix of things. And the other thing is this recording is shared. So if for whatever reason you have anything that you need to review or go over, or just forward to somebody on your team because maybe they weren't able to make it live, you're more than welcome to do so. And we will send all of that information to you after today's workshop. This is Laura's session. It's going to be practical. It's going to be practitioner level content throughout. And before we do a quick introduction, in case it's your first time here as well, we are Chronicle. What we do is we help you watch the ERE so that you don't have to. So we check the ERE every single day across every e-file and make sure that your team stays more proactive than being reactive when it comes to servicing your clients. We are built specifically for Social Security disability practices, and we run these regular, events for the community as well, with the intention of just improving the overall advocacy efforts of disability firms. And so with that, today we're going to cover a lot. And the first thing is we're going to talk about why growth in disability law is an operational question as opposed to a volume question. We're going to talk about what a connected technology stack actually looks like for a disability practice. Laura's going to go through a 6-question checklist that you can follow along for yourself to score your firm against. And then she'll also provide you with a very clear framework as to how you're going to help decide your next move. And she has some great freebies and checklists that you can take away as well. So in the case where you want to do that afterwards, you'll have some more details at the end of today's presentation. To give you a quick round of introductions for folks, my name's Will. I lead the events and community efforts at Chronicle. I'm joined by Nikhil, the founder of Chronicle. Chronicle is the ERE monitoring platform powering over 2,800 disability professionals that are monitoring hundreds of thousands of cases. And I'm very excited to also bring Laura to the stage. Laura Kennedy, she has spent more than 25 years in legal technology. She has consulted for over 5,000 law firms around the world. That's 5,000. And so when Laura talks about what breaks when a practice grows, she's not usually theorizing. Instead, she's watching it and how it actually happens at scale across every firm, because she's spent her entire career helping people fix this. So she is the creator of the Circle 360 system and of technology strategy as a service. And these are frameworks that she's going to walk you through later today. She's written several books on this topic as well. So really excited to have Laura here today. Laura, feel free to take it away.
Thank you so much for that wonderful introduction, Will. I really do appreciate that. And I am really privileged today to be able to work with Nikhil and Will on this presentation for all of you. So as Will mentioned, this is Scale Without a Strain. This is operational readiness, and we're going to talk about readying your firm for scalability, which is the only way that Social Security disability practices can really become efficient and profitable, is to be able to scale mindfully with a lot of efficiency around it and a lot of really clear goals and objectives in the journey towards scalability. So we can go ahead and move on to the next slide if you don't mind, Will. We do have a gift for you. So as part of attending today, or even recapping yourself on the presentation afterwards, you'll have access to an area of our website specifically designed for you. So we'll talk about that towards the end of the session. So the word of the day today is clarity, and clarity is the foundation of everything that you need to be able to do to scale that mindfulness that I was talking about. And there are three areas today that we're going to discuss. We're going to talk about the difference between a Social Security disability practice, what makes it structurally different, what makes it unique. Then we're going to talk about the design of your technology stack. I have a system that I developed that I push out and pressure test all of my firms against. We're going to talk about what that looks like specifically for SSD. And then Nikhil and I have put together a readiness assessment, 6 questions, really quick, kind of thought provoking for you to think about whether or not your firm is ready to scale. So that's towards the end of the session. Will did a great job introducing me. I think the only thing that I would say in addition to what Will said is that I am of the belief, and always have been, is that strategy matters more than the software. Outside of everything else he said, I am a wife, a mother. I have 12 grandchildren. I am a dog mom to Elvis, and
Okay.
I love to spend time with my family
Hey, Abby, can you hear me?
and my friends with in my life. So that is me. So we can move on to the next slide. So we're going to talk about the difference. And the difference is really the first step towards clarity. So we're going to talk about 5 different areas of where SSD is different. The first one is beyond the firm. So a significant portion of disability work, as you all are intimately aware of, moves through the Social Security ERE. And because so much of what you have to process is not in your control, that is a big differential in designing your tech stack and understanding where you are in your case management process. The second piece is the evidence that you're dealing with is living. That's the piece that works inside the firm. It's your intake, your medical development, evidence review, hearing prep. It's the work that your team is doing. It's the work that your team performs, and it's the work that you can see. And then inside of all of that are the fixed stages, because the ERE submission and status tracking is all handled within the SSA, which is still outside the firm. You have to constantly be in communication with what's happening on that side of the aisle. And then you deal in volume. So you have capped fees, and in dealing with the high volume of cases with capped fees, you have to be efficient in order to be profitable. And then you're playing with cases that in a space where the cases can be long, multi-year cases, and your clients are the most vulnerable. So they have a sense of urgency, and you have to follow through with the governmental regulations around your practice. So those two things can sometimes cause friction. And so the biggest gap that we reach in working with our Social Security disability firms is we have to reconcile. It's a constant state of reconciliation between confirming what was sent to them, when it was sent, what's outstanding, what stage are we in, and making sure that every step of the way you're in lockstep with the Social Security Administration. So that's what I think makes the practice areas different. What do you think, Nikhil?
Yeah, no, I think these are a lot of really great points. And just to echo some of them, right, which is kind of to the point of the long relationship, the SSA is always changing. You know, we're always at NOSCR seeing what new things the SSA is pushing out, whether it's new rules and regs. And that really does affect how the practice functions, right? Some years, for example, there's a backlog at initial and recon. And so that's the important part of your business to be focused on, or at the hearing level. And those switches year to year, the SSA does kind of affect how the firm needs to function. And it's super important and makes, disability different since you're all beholden to this behemoth, which is the SSA.
Great. That's great. Great point on the regulations constantly changing. That's one of those things in life that's in a constant state of change is the government and their regulations. So you can count on that like you can count on having to pay taxes, I guess. So now that we have a base of where the discussion is going to go with regard to the differences and the things that are unique to Social Security disability practices, what is it that we can really do about it? And that leads into the second point that think is important to discuss today, which is the design. And when we talk about a technology stack, a lot of times we get lost in what a stack actually looks like. What am I supposed to look at? What does that even mean, a technology stack? And so I have a visual representation in this next slide that talks about, I guess it's in a few slides about what that looks like. But before we can even get there, we got to talk about fragmented firms versus fragmented systems versus connected systems inside of firms. And only the connected systems are the ones that are going to scale. So when in the next slide, if you don't mind, Will. So a fragmented system is going to be one where the records are saved in one system and maybe noted in another one, where the ERE is tracked separately or by hand. The continuity lives in somebody's mind, not in a system. There's no shared view of the case status, and it works fine if you're a small firm until it doesn't work anymore. Whereas a connected system is going to have one record come in, and it's going to trigger an entire process. The evidence is going to be categorized, it's going to be placed on a timeline. The ERE submission has got the readiness built in. There's going to be full case visibility in one single place for everybody to view, and it's going to be ready for strategic review. So an example of a fragmented system is a new record is saved in your case management system. Maybe it's noted in another system that you have to go in there and put a note in. The person who's handling it knows where it stands, and that's great. But the mind of that staff member is the only place where there's continuity between what's happening on the SSA side and what's happening on the firm side. Whereas in a structured process or with a connected system, that same record is going to trigger a completely different process, and it's going to be visible. So what that connected system that I'm talking about has a name, and I define it as the adaptive legal practice systems, or ALPS in my world. And what this does is it provides a framework for people to consider what their tech stack looks like. And the baseline is the infrastructure, obviously, that you're running on. Are you running on cloud? Do you have servers? That's not really what the tech stack is designed to represent. It's not what type of technology are you running. It is what type of technology are you running that's going to make a difference in your practice. So at the foundation of every practice, there's the core operational platform, and then we get into the document management, the collaboration, the specialty practice tools, your growth and marketing engine that's managing everything. And then as we feed into that, it's feeding into the client experience. And then now we have this AI layer that we have to think about and bring into the fold, so that you can figure out what is going on with your firm. What type of financial position are you in? What type of analytics are you running? What type of key performance indicators do you feel are important to your practice? And all along, while we're dealing with our tech stack in this capacity, we have to ensure that we have our security and compliance on one side and our governance and policies on the other, so that we don't let our data and our content that we're dealing with run outside of those guardrails. So it's a stack that has to be built within the firm's two guidelines. So when we think about how does this apply specifically to a Social Security disability practice, it looks a little bit like this. And so it's a little bit more specific. So within your particular practice area, you have to not just track the cases, but you have to also reflect the Social Security Administration's driven workflows, because this is where everything is managing. So if the system that you're building can't model those phases clearly, then the firm will inevitably be rebuilding them in spreadsheets, in your email inboxes, in some other capacity, because that's what you have to do to manage something if the software you have internally does not manage that for you. And so that is the fragmentation that happens when you have data that lives in different places, spreadsheets, other databases, somebody's email, somebody's head, somebody's notepad, somebody's voice transcriber. All of those things are not helpful to a team of people. So as you start to build your tech stack, you want to make sure that the operational core is solid. You need a solid intake system. You need a solid case management system. You need a solid way to deal with the Social Security Administration stages and the docketing that's required. And you need a way to manage your own revenue and your own financial positions every single day. Your billing for your fees, whether or not it's been paid, the medical records that you have to collect, all of those things have to be at the core. If that foundation is rocky, then you will start to feel wobbly in your stack, and you're going to find other ways to start managing that data. So you have to take care of home base first. Once you have that home base aligned, then you can start looking at things like evidence and knowledge management, dealing with ways that you can automate the medical evidence across time, across providers, across procedural stages, because these documents are not static. They're constantly evolving. There's always something that's happening. And this is where a system like Chronicle becomes critical, because structuring those records as an organized, categorized timeline with context, and with the context that's important, because the context is important to the case narrative. Because you can store documents anywhere you want, but the context is what separates a program like Chronicle from Dropbox or Box or something like that. And when you are using a system like that, then the attorneys and the staff can gain a dynamic view of the case, and then it aligns with how the decisions internally are actually being made. And then that starts to fill that gap I talked about earlier, which is reconciling what's happening with the Social Security Administration with where the firm is managing the case at the stages that it's tracking internally. That is that system of action, that's that system of record, and that's that reconciliation process that starts to happen. And that's what interacts with that next layer, which is the Social Security Administration facing layer. And that is where without that connection, that's where pressure starts to build in the firm. So that pressure between what's happening in the firm and what's happening at the Social Security Administration and their records is where the pressure builds. And that's where your tech stack can either help you scale, or it will start to become super wobbly and you're going to feel a lot of stress dealing with your cases. And that pressure usually will happen and blow itself up probably at the wrong moment. So that's where the pressure can be relieved, is if you take care of that piece. And then when you do, then your clients are happier. They're getting answers. You're able to deal with them a lot faster. You're not sifting through folder files or Windows Explorer or something like that to try to get your clients some answers. So you're much more on the ball. They're getting their answers quicker. You're feeling much more productive and efficient, and they're feeling like you are really on top of their case. Then enters the new world that we all have to live with now, which is AI. And AI can be a blessing or AI can be a curse. And it's going to totally depend on how you implement AI and how you decide you want to put AI into your system. So you are either going to align AI, and it's going to weave itself through those layers and actually be helpful in helping you drive your insight, helping you drive oversight on your cases, help you with the analytics and the intelligence needed to see where your evidence is, measure your financial reality, all of those things. Or if you orphan it and you're just dealing with it over here and it's a bolt-on, then it can become a hindrance because people aren't going to know how to use it. Why do we even have this tool? It's not helpful. I don't understand why we need to have AI at all. It's not doing us any good. And then it doesn't become a useful tool at that point. So you really have to be mindful about bringing AI into your tech stack, because it needs to connect all of these layers to give you insights and oversight on your cases. all within those guardrails of security and compliance and governance and policy. So the tech stack is, like I said, that middle experience is your pressure point. So being operational ready means that you have a clear tech stack that you are operating against. You are mindfully building it. You know what's important, and that importance of building that tech stack means that you're going to be prepared to scale. And usually with firms, if you have strong lawyers, committed staff, steady demand, you can still be unprepared to scale, not because you lack the capability, but because your growth is going to expose the pressure and the lack of processes and procedures internally that working hard cannot overcome. Because if your systems are broken, you can work as hard as you want to, but you're still not going to be able to scale due to the volume and and all of the other things that make this a very unique practice area. So, any thoughts around that, Nikhil?
No, I think this is a really good framework that can help a lot of firms think about where they are possibly falling short. And kind of something I want to build on is like, this stack, right? It's like, this ideally isn't the perfect end state, but honestly, it's something a lot of firms have to iterate on over time to get right. And so, if you look at this and you're like, oh my God, I haven't even started thinking about how I do any of this, just remember, right? You can have pieces together over time with the right support and the right people, whether external or internal. It's going to be something that you have to take a step back from working on cases to building your business, right? It's something that you have to just dedicate time to thinking about, and willing to have a little bit of trial and error in the process of trying to get to this perfect end state.
Right. If you'll go to the next slide, Will. Probably got ahead of myself in my conversation. But when you're designing your tech stack, the goal is to build it to scale, and one that can absorb the additional volume and without proportionately adding on to the manual workload. And so just to recap, I think on the next slide, we have just I have a few different things that identify a connected practice, which is a single source of case status, workflows built on the reality of the Social Security Administration as it is at the time, remembering that evidence is a living timeline. AI is woven through the process, not bolted on. You want to make sure you can reconcile your ERE and your operational data leadership. Your operational data is something that leadership can use. So those are the requirements of a connected practice. We'll have a little exercise just for us to kind of walk through and just do a quick gut check here. Just ask yourself these 3 simple questions. If one person on your team is out next week, does the work still move? Or are you in a holding pattern? Could you, as a managing attorney or firm leader or attorney, even working on individual cases, or a paralegal that has to manage the workload, can you tell right now what's missing from every open case? Probably not. Can anyone but you, in your mind, say where a case actually stands? So if you gut check that and any one of those 3 questions gave you a pause, it's probably not because of the effort that you're putting in to manage your cases. It's probably the design of your tech stack. And so I just wanted to just kind of gut check everybody at the moment. And I have some more of this stuff in the gift that I'm going to give you at the end of this presentation, but I just wanted to kind of pause here and do a little bit of reflection on the content that we just covered so far. Okay. Now, this is the fun part because this is where Nikhil and I collaborated very closely on this presentation. And there's actually a great blog that Nikhil wrote that I posted up on our website around these same questions. But you can peruse that later on if you want to. But what I want to do is just kind of walk through these questions and talk about some of this as you start to think about the readiness of your firm. So as we walk into this readiness assessment, one thing I do want to say is that scaling a practice not a software plan or a staffing plan, nor is it software search. It is building a deliberate practice for scalability to take on greater complexity and more cases without losing control of your practice. And that is what scaling your practice means. So that foundationally is where we are going to begin with every single one of these questions. And as we go through them, there's going to be a lot of conversations around operational growth, and there's going to be 6 challenges that every single one of these questions are going to address. The first one is that economics are going to tighten as you grow. The hiring does not equal capacity, so you can hire and hire and hire away, but if you have broken systems, you have broken technology, you have broken processes and procedures, you can hire as many people as you want to, but it's not going to scale your business. The client trust is not going to scale automatically either. That's why you have to build these systems and this tech stack in such a way that your clients trust what information you have, that you have the most current information, that you're giving them the most current status updates on their cases, and all of that. If you can get that information at your fingertips without having 24 hours to get back with them, you're going to have a scalable practice. The pipeline is going to outpace the process. So if you have to know that that's what's going to happen, your pipeline as you grow it is going to outpace your practice. So you have to be prepared to be able to deal with that. You don't want your cash flow to lag the caseload. You want your caseload to support the cash flow. And the last one is that as you are going through your readiness assessment and answering these questions, with volume increases, you also are going to increase your compliance risk. So now you can kind of see how that tech stack is aligning into your readiness by making sure that you've got all of these different components under control. All right, I think now we're ready to do the questions. So as you are working through these, I just want you to sit down mentally and just think yes or no to these different questions. Do you know the status of every case without logging in? Can your team reach the Social Security Administration case data without fighting for access? Do you learn about decisions and deadlines proactively? Does your case data match what the Social Security Administration actually has? Do mail and medical records flow in or pile up? And then the real question at the end is, does your admin work grow as fast as your caseload? So we're going to talk about, Nikhil and I'll come back to these questions and talk about some of the answers. But if you did that mental yes, no, yes, no, yes, no, on the next page, if you answered mostly yes, then you have a workable operational foundation for growth. If it was mixed, growth is still possible, but when you start digging in, you're going to expose some dependencies and reporting gaps and inefficiencies. But if it's mostly no, probably scaling is not the right next step for you. You probably need to come back in and do some realignment around your operations. So if we can go back just a minute, Will. Nikhil, let's talk a little bit about together about some of these questions and what each one of them can mean for a disability practice.
Yeah, for sure. And something I just want to frame up, right? Because, when people look at this question list, they probably think about like, well, this is how my firm works today. Something I just want to flag, especially as, the process has changed, is more and more firms are doing more and more work at the initial and recon level. And so just keep that in mind, right? If you're a firm that typically just jumps into the hearing level, things have changed. The SSA has changed the process, the amount of data access. So just want to kind of make sure you guys keep that in mind as we go through each of these questions. And you're thinking about like, maybe you thought, oh, I was fine at the hearing level. Have you even considered the initial and recon level? But yeah, so then kind of, going down this list, and, Laura, feel free to jump in at any point, but like, do you know the status of every case without logging in, right? And this is where status, most people just think about like, is there a decision or not? Do I need to file an appeal? There's a lot more status here that actually matters when you're talking to a client or thinking about your workflows. Because it could be like, has it reached DDS yet? Have you been assigned? Already seeing in some of these questions, right? There is no status right now for has the attestation been issued, right? But there are places you can find some guideposts towards that. And like how easy is it to actually access that information?
I agree with that, and I also will go back to what I said before, which is if the status of a case is living inside of one case manager, one paralegal, or one attorney, the practice as a whole has a continuity problem, and it might be being disguised as staffing strength when in reality it's a process and procedural problem inside the firm.
Sure. And then, the second question, your team reached the SSA case data without fighting for access, right? Most firms I know right now still have essentially a Google Voice phone or like some phone in their office where you get the code to get to the ERE. And if that phone is out of batteries, which happened during one of my training calls, that phone was out of batteries. Guess what? No one can access ERE data until that phone gets charged again. So, Joe, just think about those little things here about like, yeah, maybe you guys are used to this process, but is it really efficient if there's some single point of failure where, hey, without, if the ERE goes down, we're all now locked out of our case files. So just think about that when you're thinking about like how easy is it to get access.
Right, right. That's good. All right, the next one is, do you learn about decisions and deadlines proactively? So I think this would be a good place, Nikhil. I don't want to keep putting the pressure on you,
Yeah.
my friend, but this is a good place to talk about the decisions and deadlines coming down proactively and how your product can help.
Yeah, for sure. So most folks right now are used to with the hearing level and the appeals level, they put the decisions in those status reports, right? So they were pretty easy to find, and that meant you could keep on moving. As I was mentioning, right, initial recon has become a bigger part of many firms' processes. They know they could either win the case at initial recon or help it move along faster. Those decisions are actually now posted in the case documents in the e-file and the ERE. So they're available to you, but you just don't see it unless you open each page, each client's page one by one, kind of going to point two, which is just a painful process, or you wait for the mail. And usually the mail is completely missing for a lot of, decisions at the initial recon level. And what happens for a lot of folks is the client calls in being like, hey, I got denied. What are you going to do about it? And you're caught scrambling. And it just doesn't look good. So what Chronicle actually does, right, is because we check the e-file every single day. As soon as that decision is posted, we'll notify you and actually extract the decision so you know if it was denied, so you can proactively call your client. You can start working on the appeal 10 days early, and you're never caught missing a deadline because you never even knew the decision came in.
Great. All right, does your case data match with what that SSA actually has? And I'll answer this one or put my 2 cents in on this one, and then I'll let you follow up, Nikhil. But
Yeah.
in my experience, this is where many firms overestimate their readiness. The ability to submit something is not the same as operational control. Readiness in a SSD practice requires reconciliation between the internal record and the SSA facing environment. And if there's no way for your internal processes to easily confirm what was sent, when it was sent, what remains outstanding, then the whole operating model becomes disjointed and inefficient. So this is where that pressure point in the tech stack, this is where the pressure is. And this is what really can make or break a firm who wants to scale. Your thoughts, Nikhil?
Yeah, no, this is where I see a lot of firms doing manual data entry, trying to keep things in sync. If you have more than 50 cases, it's almost impossible to keep it up to date. And, once again, not to always plug Chronicle, but like Chronicle can sync this data into your case management system so your case data does match what the SSA is actually reporting.
Perfect. Do mail and medical records flow in or do they pile up?
Yeah, so at least, yeah, happy to take this one, which is, once again, most firms I'm seeing, they're waiting on the mail. The mail comes in, it's already delayed. And the process usually is some person at the front of the office is tasked with opening each piece of mail, scanning it in, triaging it to the right case manager. We're trying to find out what's important. And at that point, you're already a couple days behind, right? So it's just this constantly delayed process of getting mail, getting medical records, sorting and triaging them. And for a lot of firms, the ideal process is you know about the mail before it even comes in, right? You know what to expect. So that way your team is already working on those items. And that's data that's available in the ERE or via Chronicle. So that way you're already ahead of things. And that piece of mail is more about a checkbox just to confirm it's already being handled rather than the starting point of a lot of the standard operating procedures.
Yeah. And to just follow up on that, it goes back to workflow, right? So if the workflow inside of the firm is really held together by spreadsheets, inbox flags, the mail delivery system, duplicated notes, verbal handoffs, those types of things that if those are the mainstays of communication in the firm, then that workflow is not a designed workflow. It's a patched workflow. And patching like that, patching in the holes, that can sustain a practice for a while, but it's not the foundation that a firm can launch off of to scale. So it's really needing to ensure that you're building your workflow, your processes, your procedures, so that it can be visible and repeatable every single step of the way. So if you find that things are piling up, that would be a good sign that you're probably patching rather than processing. And then the last one is does your admin work grow as fast as your caseload?
Yeah, this one, typical sign that this is happening is you're also hiring as fast as your caseload grows, right? If you're building an efficient business, you actually want to see your margins grow over time. So your bottom line is actually growing, not purely linearly with your caseload, but if anything faster. And so, yeah, that's something just the red flag to watch for is every single time I add 100 cases, do I need to hire someone else? Or are my systems scaling as Laura is always talking about?
Yeah, and the other piece too is that as I was thinking about this question that you post in the blog, problems right now can look manageable at your current volume, but they become harder and harder to diagnose when you start to layer on more cases and more people and more activity, but you don't really work really hard to close those gaps that I was talking about. Because one of the things that in today's world with AI is that context building that I was talking about initially at the beginning of this conversation. And you want to be able to not just build your data, but you want to build your data with context. So adding data into a case management system, a knowledge management system, collaborative systems, things like that. You want to be able to build that data with context so that you can start to build strategy. If you don't have context around your data, then everything you're doing is just a guess. And it's hard to scale a law firm on guesses. You want to scale it on strategy. So those are the types of things that can also begin to help your admin staff manage their caseload is if you have a strategic vision around how you want to deal with the data that's being accumulated. And law firms just generally are accumulating data at a seriously high rate, especially electronic data. So building a platform and a tech stack that can support the amount of data that's coming in, it's not just the amount of cases, but the sheer amount of data that's coming in is extremely important too. All right. So where do you go from here? Really where we want to go is into a position where we start to deal with visibility. So the next step, if you want to go to the next slide. The next step begins with visibility. Visibility comes from dealing with your workflow, evaluating your workflow, seeing how your evidence is being handled, dealing with the systems that you have, looking at the habits of your team, and look at how you're interfacing and dealing with the information from the Social Security Administration. Not necessarily does it mean getting new tools or more motion, but it's really getting clarity around how your practice is functioning. And that clarity is the difference between expanding your practice with confidence and expanding it into a strained type of situation. So the goal is to avoid strain and expand confidently. Um, I call that confidence piece of that firms rising, constantly rising, moving in a trajectory of health, a trajectory of efficiency, a trajectory of profitability, a trajectory of client confidence, a trajectory of innovation and impact and things like that. And I call it rise because it's really a system of recognizing where you are, integrating with the correct systems, the right systems for your business, strengthening the firm, strengthening up that technology stack and the processes and the process and procedures inside of the firm that use that technology, and then evolving, scaling with support, understanding that this is the mindful path that we have to take. That's the framework within which everything that I build, everything that I do is going towards that goal. And the goal is going to shift as the firm evolves. So you're going to go through the process over and over again as you continue to evolve the firm, because scaling is not a one-time activity. Scaling a firm is an ongoing process of constantly looking at the firm, understanding where you're sitting, having workable metrics, workable KPIs, workable things that tell you where the state of the firm is, evaluating what's working, identifying where it's not, fixing it where it needs to be fixed, so that you are constantly trying to become a better, more efficient firm. So we have a lot of tools, and I've spent almost 30 years developing my tools. I know this is a lot to look at, but we talked about the architecture. The other piece of it is as the firm goes through these evolutionary cycles, it is a 7 process. You assess it, diagnose it, optimize it, lead through it, measure it, elevate it, and then rise. And you go through it again, and you go through it again. You have the architecture, the framework in which to deal with it, and then you have always have the focus on the people. The people are the most important part. You cannot run a law firm without people, and you can't run a business without people. You can't even use AI without people. You need people. Humans need humans. Humans need to connect to humans, and your clients are people. They're not robots and AI bots and things like that. They're people too. So people need people. And so so when we tie all of these different components of a firm together, what they need to do to grow, the architecture and the framework within which to grow, the people, we grow the people, we need a strategy, and it's the thread that keeps it all in a line so that the firm can rise. And that is my system for helping firms do that, because every firm is different, but everybody can follow through on the same system. It works for everyone. It works for every single one of my clients I've ever worked with. So that's my methodology that Will was talking about. And then when we get to that point, the firm as a whole will have components of these dimensions, the connected intelligence, people connecting with technology, with data, with each other, knowledge management. You're able to look at data, help to make strategic decisions instead of guesses. You'll have your processes and your workflows transforming your business. Financial wellness, you'll be able to see where you are, know what you're doing. You'll have AI innovation. You'll be able to innovate and have some impact in that. Your clients will have more confidence. You'll have more cultural strength. You'll have secure resilience because you've got those guardrails in place and you know that your security is in place so that you can manage the risks and the duties to your clients and all of that within those guardrails as well. You're growing deliberately, you're scaling deliberately, You are strong leaders building strong firms, and you have strategic clarity, which brings us all the way around to the word of the day, which was clarity. So let's go to the next slide. So before we close, I just have a few more thoughts for you. The first one that I want to leave you with is that, like I said, readiness is not a one-time audit. It is a strategic partnership. My book is available on Amazon. It can talk about strategy. I'm not trying to sell my book. It's just an easy way for me to tell you how I see strategy and technology together. If you want to have a conversation, I'm happy to do that too. And the next slide, please. The key takeaways that we talked about you having today were to see what made your practice different, recognize what a connected system looks like, assess your own readiness. Those were the things that we wanted to make sure we talked about today. And well, if you'll go to the next slide, I think we accomplished that. I think we learned that growth is an operational question. It's not necessarily a volume one. I hope you gained some practical tools today to audit your own practice. And I hope you discovered a framework today that will help you decide if you are ready to scale. What I offer you today is the Connected Practice Design Checklist. It's downloadable for you. There is a QR code there that will take you to a website where you can get that checklist and some other things available. If you check back in that frequently, I'll be adding in some more resources for you, but it's a place where you can go today. If you want to go ahead and go to the next slide. The other thing I would offer you all today as attending this webinar is if you would like a complimentary discovery session where we can have a conversation around your systems, your goals, what readiness looks like for your firm. You can book on my calendar, or you can call my office. My contact information is out there. If you reach out to me directly via email, I can get you in touch with my staff and they can get you on my calendar probably faster than that QR code can. And then the next slide is the slide where I want to see if you have any questions.
Awesome. So with that, thank you so much for that presentation, Laura. We've got a couple questions to kick us off. I'm going to keep it on the prior slide in case folks do want to check that QR code. And I also put into the Zoom chat the freebie download in case folks want to get that. The first question is coming from Tony. Which would be, in what situations does it make sense to merge firms with the right partners rather than scale on your own? Have you noticed any trends between successful law firm mergers versus unsuccessful law firm mergers? And what do you notice is an ideal attorney to staff ratio for scaling?
Oh, those are all really great questions. So we do a lot of work, and I do a lot of work in my consulting business around this same question, succession planning, what to do with your law firm. That's part of what we do. I would say at a minimum, no more than two attorneys should be sharing one staff person, but ideally it would be great if it was more of a one-to-one relationship. Rarely does that make sense economically, but depending on how busy the person is, you may need to have a staff person dedicated to a specific revenue generator. The challenges of merging firms, when I work through those, I work through a lot of times when firms separate and then also come together. The challenge is always trying to decide what technology platform is going to rule when the firms come together. It's usually not, the friction doesn't usually happen because they don't see eye to eye on philosophy or goals or even strategy or even growth. It always comes down to platform. And we do better when we can be on more current platforms to be able to scale up quicker if people are on not, they don't have to be on the same platform, but they need to be on a current platform. When you're on a current platform, then data is much more structured usually. If you're on a current platform, generally it has more current data. You're not dealing with, you know, data from 20 years ago is not going to help you diagnose how to build strategic initiatives today. So people have a tendency to want to hold on to all of this really old data. And it's really, if you think about it, would you want an AI bot to make decisions on how you practice do your practice today and manage your cases today based on how you practiced them 20 years ago when you were a newer attorney or a less seasoned attorney? Not me. So the idea of consolidating data, consolidating platforms really is where friction happens. And everybody, you know, you talk to the vendors and the vendors like, oh yeah, no problem. We can handle that. And the reality is that they can't. They don't know your business. They don't know your data. They're just trying to sell you more licenses or trying to sell you a platform. So you really have to mindfully approach that topic to decide what you want to do with the data. How much data do you have to hold on to? Those are the types of questions that have to happen. So
And
I
maybe
don't know if
for,
I
but
answered your question, but
yeah,
that
I think you covered two of the three, but like the question I'd ask you and Nikhil here is there anything in terms of what you all notice is an ideal attorney to staff ratio for scaling?
yeah, I did answer that. I
Okay.
said ideally 1 to 1, but at least 1 to 2.
Nikhil, would you agree with that, or would you say that it goes higher than that?
Sorry, as in like 1-to-1, I want to make sure I understand Laura's saying, so 1-to-1 staff to attorney,
Yeah.
and or if not 1-to-2. And so I don't know, this is where I've seen a couple different things. I'm definitely not an expert like Laura in terms of like, the day to day. I've seen everything from there's one firm I know that has maybe two attorneys and then a dozen or so staff, and they're running 1,000 cases, and so they're getting a lot out of their attorneys just kind of plowing through the hearings only, and otherwise staff kind of manage everything else. So I do think it really kind of comes into what systems and processes you have in place. But then there's other firms I know I've definitely seen where it's like, one attorney to like 2 to 3 staff members, and they very much work collaboratively as a team. So it just kind of depends what type of firm you want to run in at least what we've seen so far.
Yeah.
Yeah, I would also say
And
from speaking with a couple different firms that the ratios they change through the years too. Like some firms they start with like one per every 200 cases, 300 cases, etc. And that goes back to the operational workflows of whatever your firm chooses to approach from the standpoint of like client communication and all these other respective downstream administrative tasks they require.
I think if you have one timekeeper who needs 12 staff to manage their caseload, then we probably have a technology stack issue because that's a lot of hands managing a lot of cases. That would be my opinion.
Awesome. We've got some more questions, but before we do that, I did want to share in the chat. I shared a link to the feedback form. Chronicle is going to ship out a couple copies of Laura's book if you submit that feedback form. So if you want to get a copy of Laura's book, submit that feedback form, and those will be raffled away afterwards. One
Wow, I didn't
question
know
we
you
have
were
as
doing
well.
that. That's cool, Will. Thanks.
Yeah, I think we had teamed up with a member of your team on that side, but we forgot to work it into the slide there. So I wanted to make sure we cover that. So the next question is, where do I usually actually start if I think my systems are holding us back, but I'm not sure what's broken?
The where you start is you start with an audit. And so if you go on our website, there is a way that you can do a benchmark system. We have 5 different benchmark assessments that are free for the law firms to go through. They're going to give you a baseline on where your technology is. If you do that, if you go through that benchmark assessment and then schedule the consultation with me, I'll have a little bit more context as to what to do to help you. because I think you need to know, and you don't need to pay me for you to to self-assess and see where you are with your tech stack. It's not as in-depth as what a diagnostic or comprehensive technology stack would be. That would be a paid engagement, but I think it will give you a start to see where you are, and at least give you some baseline context to have a conversation with me. The those assessments, assessing where you are, assessing what you have, how you use it, how your staff uses it, what's important, what's not important, what's extraneous, learning what they do and what they are actually using versus what you think they're using. That insight is invaluable in trying to determine what you want to do with your technology.
We've got a couple more questions. I want to make sure that I do our closeouts things before we hit the top of the hour, since some folks have to drop immediately at the top of the hour. So before we get back to those questions, I got some questions from David, as well as I see one from Shiv. Just wanted to drop in that if you want to learn more about Chronicle, you're welcome to check out our site at chroniclelegal.com. We also are running our next roundtable with peers in August 20th, 12 p.m. and 2 p.m. If you just want to talk on some of these operational points and also the people questions, that's our topic of the month for August. And with that, David had a question, which is, have you seen anybody have success with replacing actual employee tasks with AI technologies like Claude Cowork?
So this is a topic that comes up a lot, and I'm very passionate advocate for not replacing your staff with technology. I think the goal of the law firm should be to train your staff how to use the technology. The that to me is the most important thing. If you have staff who are willing to learn how to use AI, willing to learn how to use the technology, then you have in my opinion, a golden staff. When you are looking at your staff and you're trying to determine if you should replace your staff with AI, that's just part of the hype cycle, in my opinion, that is going to end up, you're going to end up regretting that. What I believe is that if you provide people with the opportunity to learn how to help you with your business and learn AI simultaneously, and you have people who are willing to do that, then you have people who are not. If you have people who are not willing to learn AI, that they do not want to do it, that they are resistant, and you cannot get them to move off of that place, those are the people that you need to replace with people who are willing to use and learn how to use AI. But you have to have people, humans need to be able to learn how to use AI, but AI cannot exist without humans. It's where the judgment comes in, it's where the analysis comes in. If you believe that an AI bot can do a better job of making good decisions for your humans that you're dealing with on a daily basis, then we have a bigger problem in our society than what I think we have in so many other regards. So I would say keep everybody on your staff who is open to the idea of working with AI, work with the ones who are resistant to dealing with AI, and find a way to help your staff overcome their fears, their anxieties about it. And their biggest anxiety and their biggest fears come from leaders in the firm who talk about replacing them with AI. So that's my 2 cents.
And to clarify, David had a follow-up. He's not necessarily thinking about it from replacing staff standpoint, but in terms of task workflows, it sounds like. So
I think that you
documents.
are going to get much higher work product out of people if you can replace redundant tasks with AI, where the folks that are doing them right now have oversight over those tasks and can review it as opposed to having to execute it. Having AI calendar deadlines as opposed to a human having to go in there and make it. AI is going to be probably more precise than somebody accidentally clicking on the wrong date or time. So being able to have AI do the initial deadline calculations and calendaring of those deadlines, and then having somebody compare it to a scheduling order or a timeline is a much better use of that person's time than sitting there inviting 75 people to a calendar invite. Yes.
That makes sense. And David, just as a supplement there, if you check out our blog, we actually had a roundtable about this for both large firms and small firms about a month or so ago. You'll see some exact examples of answering your question as well as to how folks are, using AI for different employee tasks and whatnot. So
I love
I
AI. I am a huge proponent of AI. And our team uses AI every single day to do things, but um, and it has made us internally over the last 5 years of using it much more efficient.
Shiv was asking this question, which is in regards to AI in the tech stack, are you able to provide any thoughts regarding the balancing act of using AI and ensuring that PII or HIPAA related information is not shared? With Social Security disability in particular, it'd be great to have a tech stack where AI is integrated, but as we get into the ERE or case management, oftentimes that will contain PII. So what thoughts do you have in terms of that balancing act there?
So the balancing act is to make sure that the data and the content that you have um, preserves inside of itself any information that contains PII or P or a HIPAA or anything like that. Any security requirements that are there should be respected from the bucket of data that you're asking the AI to pull from. So if you are in a Claude co-work situation or you're looking at trying to leverage that, the 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 content itself needs to protect itself, and Claude should not be able to access that data. So you have to be very mindful about where is the data coming from? What are you using to access it? What are the guardrails that you have? And things like and all of those types of things. So it's a building your governance and your policies around it. You have to know all of those things about where your data lives and not just give those AI tools and platforms carte blanche access to your data.
With capped fees, how do I know a technology is going to change? A technology change is actually going to pay for itself.
We can sit down with you and run an ROI analysis would be the only way that you would know. You have to, figure out where you're losing time and analyze where your workflow bottlenecks and how much time it takes for you to process and how much more efficient you can be. Because obviously in capped fee situations, efficiency is where it's going to be. So if you can get rid of the bottlenecks and identify those workflows and processes that are bottlenecking you or causing you to overextend time, spend too much time in one area of managing a case, then that would be where you can leverage it and you can build your ROI in.
Awesome. With that, I'm going to drop it in the chat one last time, which is the feedback form if you want to enter to win a copy of Laura's book. We're a couple minutes after the top of the hour, so I want to be respectful of folks' time. Thank you so much, everybody, for joining in for today's workshop. I think the one last question we'll take is from Mark, and we'll do a wrap up, which is Mark is asking, what tech stack do you often see regularly that you believe works well for folks?
Oh, that's a good question. And my answer is very simple. What works for one firm does not work for another because firms are made up of people. People design the workflow, people design the processes that manage the workflow internally. And so the products that a firm chooses have to match up to those things. And that's why I spend my time and get certified on over 200 products in this space because there is not a one size fits all solution for any law firm. I have ideas, I have thoughts, but it's a combination of tools, usually not one particular tool.
Awesome. With that, thank you so much, everybody. We'll have this recording out to you in the next few days. So if you need to review anything about the frameworks that Laura went over today or the checklist, you're welcome to do so. Other than that, thank you so much, Laura, and we'll catch you all the next time.
Thank you, Will. Thank you, everyone, for joining.